Welcome in, everybody, to Fandom NFL. I'm your QB1, Joe Pizzapia, and today's show is an absolute banger. I cannot wait to get to this year with the must-haves of 2026, the players that you should not leave your drafts without, and my must-have guest for a show just like this. You know him from Yahoo because he's wearing the hat and also because he's got it in the background in neon behind him. It's my good pal, Canada's pride, Justin Boone joins the show. Booney, after all these years, we finally got to hang out in person a couple weeks ago. We got to go to drinks and dinner together. It was a lovely time. But you're a taller fellow. What's it like having to work with Harmon, who's even like more of a giant? I feel like I'm like the shortest guy in this industry. I feel like sometimes.
It's funny, like when you meet people in the industry and you've known them for a while and you've done shows with them, but you haven't actually seen them in person, how sometimes different they are. Yeah, Harmon, I was shocked when I walked up to him for the first time and towered over me a little
Yeah,
bit.
he's like
Like
a tight
he's a
end.
big dude. He's working out a lot. He looks great. And yeah, he's continuing to do it. And every time we, have videos coming up or whatnot, I hear him talking about how he's getting ready for it. And I think to myself, man, I better start running again. I better start working out a little bit here because I got to try to match him. I can't be going in the opposite
You,
direction, right?
you want to
But
make sure you get those reception perception numbers off before the draft season. I'm just saying you
exactly.
gotta work on that. We gotta get Harmon on the show too. But Boone, you're a personal favorite of mine over the years. We've done so much together, and it's great to have you on the program. It's great to always talk fantasy football with you. The Yahoo product is just insanely good right now. You guys are crushing it. You're bringing in Norris and Winks. You and Harmon obviously there, and the entire team just crushing life over there. And I love doing shows like this because when we get to this point in the season now, it's about really identifying the targets, the players that we want to make sure that we're getting, and the reasons for that. And Justin Boone's got 5 guys that we're going to talk about today on the show. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Fandom NFL. What are you doing with your time? Drop your comments below, ring the bell till it goes ding. And if you like this video and do all those things, like good boys and girls, guess what you happen? You could possibly win some cool stuff. 5,000 subscribers. When we hit this number, we're giving away a Thurman Thomas autographed mini helmet. Certification of authenticity included, baby. It's on the way to Chateau Pizzapia in just a couple days. I've purchased this for one of you to win. So again, how do you win? Subscribe, comment, like, real easy stuff. And of course, join us here at Fandom NFL all season long. Booney, you like that helmet? You can't win
I
it. You're not
mean,
allowed
as
because
a
you're a
Bills
friend.
fan, I'm
I know
gonna
you
have to
do.
get my name in the hat there to try to win that one. That is
Well,
a
I guess
great prize.
technically, you don't work for me, so technically
It would
you
look a
could win
little
it.
strange if my name ends up being the one that wins. So I don't think we can do that, but it is an awesome prize.
Well, I think you should like the video and subscribe anyway. I'm just saying.
You know I'm going
Help a
to.
brother out.
Absolutely.
He says that, folks, but I don't know. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to troll him on the internet after. All right, let's get after it. Let's talk about some of the players. Let's start with running back, and let's start with Chase Brown, who is on your list. Now, Chase Brown obviously has had some really good seasons here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year, 232 in terms of attempts, over 1,000 yards rushing, 6 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns, and 437 yards receiving. This year, we're looking at basically from a projection standpoint, a copy and paste. But for him to be a must have, there has to be more in it for you. And I know that we had Joe Burrow miss significant time last season. Obviously, that was going to stunt the growth of the offense and the productivity of it. There's no way it doesn't when you lose a quarterback of that caliber. So we always hope, and we can light candles in church and hope that we get a full season of healthy Joe Burrow and Chase and everybody else. And what does that mean for Chase Brown if everybody stays on the field and this offense rolls from week one all the way through the end of the season?
Well, that's the thing. We have to look back at last year and give it a little bit of context. You touched on the quarterback injury that we had early in the year, Burrow not being out there, but also when that happened, it coincided with the absolute worst part of their schedule, just a horrific stretch that they went through. And that's why Chase Brown's numbers early in the season weren't great at all. However, Joe, once we had Joe Flacco in there, who's not a great quarterback, but at least raised the bar a little bit from what they were dealing with before. And then Burrow eventually comes back. The schedule levels out a little bit. And if you look at the final 10 games, when it was Flacco and when it was Burrow under center, Brown was the third highest fantasy back in average scoring per game, 19.1 fantasy points per game in half PPR. So I'm willing to look at that early part of the season and throw it out with the Burrow injury, with the schedule, all that sort of stuff. Will the schedule be tough for stretches again? Yes. But when you have Joe Burrow and you have Chase and you have Higgins and all these weapons that they have there, I think they're going to be able to attack that a little bit better this year, not having Jake Browning as the guy that's starting for them at quarterback, right? So that's
Oh,
a huge
Jake
piece in
Browning.
this, that for a large chunk of the season, we saw Brown flash that almost elite upside. I think he can be a top 5 back. So we're getting him in the second round. It's a really nice value. We want to hit running back early this year. He's one of these pieces in the second round that I think is going to return first round value. He can do it all. Even if they do fall behind, he can catch a ton of passes, right? He was top 5 in the league last year in terms of targets and receptions at the position, and he has almost no backfield competition. Are we worried about Samaje Perine? No. Are we worried about Taj Brooks? No. Like, they don't have anyone that is threatening his touches. And the coaching staff continuously this year is talking about him being a focal point of this offense. They're going to get him involved early and often. This guy has the path to putting up that really meaningful RB1 season, and you can get him right now as a low end or even a low end RB1 or even high end RB2. So I love him. I'm trying to get him as many places as I can.
The question is, how aggressive can we get in the draft with him? I had somebody yesterday who was saying, I'd like to take him in the top 5 picks. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I think that's
No.
unnecessary based on ADP, that you just don't have to make that kind of a cash grab for Chase Brown. The intriguing part is when you look at him as well, is you have a guy who's had at least 54 receptions the last 2 years, right? There was only 4 guys who had more receptions at running back last year than Chase Brown. Can you name them, Justin Boone? You want to play a little game?
Oh wow,
One is
no,
they're pretty
I
easy.
hate trivia. That's
They're pretty easy.
oh
So don't
okay. We're gonna,
overthink it. There,
yeah,
3 of them are big time
CMC,
running it. CMC, that's one.
CMC, Gibbs,
Hmm.
Jean Robinson,
Yeah, and one more.
and then this one's gonna be a strange
This is
one
the
because
one.
if
It's
you're
gonna be the
saying
strange
this,
one.
it's gonna be somebody really really weird.
I'll give you a hint. He is not with the team that he was
Kenny
last year.
Gainwell.
Kenny Gainwell, correct.
The hint helped. The hint definitely got me there.
We're friends. I want to make you look good on the program. I don't want to embarrass you. But think about that, right? I mean, we're talking about right there with so Kenneth Gainwell aside, because he's just a different kind of back in that offense that he operated in last year. But Chase Brown, even without Joe Burrow, was right there with all those elite guys in receptions. And I think that is a probably something we don't think about enough. And I mean, I don't know if that's part of a byproduct of the lesser quarterback play. Maybe some people will point to that and say, well, with Joe Burrow's there, it's not going to be the case because he's not going to dump off the ball as much. To which I say, when you have a quarterback like Joe Burrow, you're moving the chains more, you're getting more opportunities. To me, this is an opportunity actually where he can even build on potentially what he did last year because they're going to have a longer time of possession and the frequency of actually running more plays, I think, year over year.
And there aren't that many backs that have the path towards that kind of just monster volume. And he's one of them. And I don't think he gets mentioned in that conversation. He's not the most exciting name, right? People click on him in the first couple rounds, but often people would rather go after a Saquon Barkley, a Kenneth Walker, these guys that make more headlines. Chase Brown just kind of quietly right in that mix. So I don't like picking at the end of the first this year, Joe. I would much rather pick in the top half of the first round or the middle of the first round. But if you do end up at the end of the first round, come back around early in the second and grab Chase Brown as your second pick. And that will make up for the loss that you had at the end of the first round, having to take, the second tier of backs like James Cook or any one of those guys, Ashton Genty, that are available in that range, who aren't quite as exciting as the guys that are going at the top of the first.
You're pretty good at ranking. I know you've got a couple trophies. I don't want you to pull them out. We know you've got the trophies. They're probably right next to you. So rank this for me: Chase Brown or Genty? Who would you rather have?
It is still Genty, but that
Okay.
range, like even including Cook, like once we get through the top 4 backs and the obvious guys and Gibbs and Robinson, and then I have JT ahead of CMC, but whatever order you want to put those two in, I'm
Well,
not
what
going to
about that
argue
next
that
tier?
much.
What about Saquon
Once
Barkley and Chase Brown?
once we get past that, it's from James Cook and Genty, who I still have as late first rounders, all the way down to Kenneth Walker, Omarion Hampton. I have Achane in that mix. I have Barkley in that mix. And of course, Brown in that mix. All those guys are very close in terms of my rankings and projections. So if you want to shuffle that up in any particular order, again, I think they're all pretty good picks. They all have a little bit in terms of like red flags, but overall, I think they're all going to be solid for fantasy this year. I have Brown ahead of Barkley. I have him ahead of Achane,
Same.
and I have him ahead of Walker and Hampton.
All right, so there you go. Hampton's the one that I'm just so curious about, but I should probably remind myself, hey, dumbass, look at what Chase Brown's done the last 2 years. Maybe you should pump the brakes a little bit on taking Hampton over Brown. But then again, I get excited about stuff. I just like football. All right, let's talk
It's
about
supposed to be
another
fun,
running back.
Joe. You have
It
to let it
is.
be fun.
It is. And now people have been sending me, oh, you're worried now about Mike McDaniel's comments. I'm like, no, he's a nut job. He's going to say whatever he says in press conferences about this guy and that guy. I don't believe him for a second. Okay,
He's
he
also
played your
talked
best
up
player.
Hampton quite a bit. Like the
course he has.
headlines end up being when he discusses all three backs and he addresses fantasy owners,
Right.
but
'Cause that
he's
gets more
also
clicks.
taken time to talk up
Right.
how good Hampton is. He's definitely the most talented back in that backfield, so
Of
he will get
course
the
he
most work. Does his projection suffer a little bit because the other guys might be involved and take a little off the top? Yeah, it does. I've moved him to the bottom of that tier, but still, like I said, if you want to put him anywhere from like RB5 to where I have him as a low end RB1, I'm fine with it. All those guys are going to be solid. Don't sweat it too much.
All right. Make sure when you're looking at all the ADPs and the consensus, you're looking over at RotoWire. Download the app. Use the tools for your draft. Use the assistant GM. We've been doing the mock drafts here on the program, so everybody's gotten to see how good the tools are at RotoWire, especially for the mock draft stuff. You got to use it. Use the promo code JoeyP. You get 20% off, and you support the channel, and you support independent content creators like me when you sign up at RotoWire. So go to rotowire.com, download the app. Earmuffs, Boone. This is not a Yahoo read. This is about RotoWire. But seriously, we've had some great stuff. We just did a mock draft from the 1 spot, from the 12 spot, and then from the 6. And we actually got a perfect grade. If you missed that, my buddy Sean Rogers, big Hollywood actor. He was in films like The Flash. He came over and hung out with us and did that mock. And we got a perfect score somehow from the middle of that draft. It was super fun. Go check it out if you missed it last week. Next running back on the list here is one that I have a ton of shares of early. And I love when people that I think are smarter than me agree with me about things. And you agree with me about Jonah Coleman, who I thought this was one of those draft picks when it happened that I kind of circled in my brain. And I went, that's important. I think they're trying to tell us something there because RJ Harvey certainly got his opportunities last year. J.K. Dobbins started out very strong. You could take the projections and throw them out because really this has to do with who stays healthy ahead of him. J.K. Dobbins historically doesn't play an entire season, already dealing with some injuries in training camp. So let's talk about the other end of the running back spectrum. We talked about Chase Brown in the beginning. Now let's discuss Jonah Coleman towards the end of drafts and what makes him a player that you don't want to leave drafts without.
And normally when we're discussing must-haves, it's guys that are a little higher up the board than this one. But I'll tell you, when I get to about the 10th round, I'm willing to take Coleman, and it's exactly what you just suggested there. J.K. Dobbins has this injury history that is hard to ignore. We never want to call guys injury prone. We never want to assume that injuries are coming. But at this point, Dobbins is like the closest thing to that, right? Every single season in the NFL has been shortened for him by some sort of injury. In the last 2 years, we saw him be pretty good for fantasy in the first half of each year when it was the Chargers 2 years ago, obviously with the Broncos last year. But that inevitable injury always shows up for him. And we got the reminder, like you said recently, where he gets a little banged up. Now, to his credit, he did come back the next day and was at practice. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. We want this guy to finally have a full 17-game season and show us what he can do. But if we're looking for backs later in drafts who have a path to a ton of fantasy production, I'm going to take the guy who's behind a starter that always gets hurt, right? So I look at Coleman as somebody who is the number 3 back on that depth chart, but is actually the immediate backup to Dobbins. And everything the Broncos have said has kind of pointed that way. You can go back to last year when Dobbins got hurt. RJ Harvey got out there. He was good for fantasy, but he wasn't very efficient. He was kind of doing it on volume. They really didn't have anybody else in the backfield to put out there. So he was the only guy in town. And again, he was fine for fantasy. You could put him in your lineup. You could play him down the stretch. But then this offseason, there was a lot of reports that the Broncos were looking at the free agent class in terms of running backs. Then it gets around to the draft. They don't have a ton of picks early, but they end up taking Coleman with one of their first picks. And I think that's very meaningful. I think they knew they needed someone else behind Dobbins. They couldn't be legitimate Super Bowl contenders, which they are, and go into another season knowing that at any moment, Dobbins is going to end up on the trainer's table, and that's it. And now they have to roll with Harvey or try to find a free agent off the street. Coleman comes in. They have talked him up. He's not an elite back, of course, but he's a player that like can do everything pretty well. Coaches are really going to like him. They've mentioned that in practice, he's not just that early down grinder type. He's also out there catching passes. And I think it's set up right now, Joe, that when Dobbins goes down, and again, I don't want to plan on it, but I feel like at this point, it's the most likely outcome that he will miss time this year. Coleman is the next guy to step up in that backfield. We know the Broncos are good. We know the offensive line is good. They're going to win a ton of games, and you're going to want pieces of this backfield. And you can do it so cheap. You could still take Dobbins if you want to in the 8th or 9th round and then come back around and get Coleman. I take him, 10th, 11th. ADP wise, he goes even later than that. So you don't even have to jump that early to grab him. But he is a player that when it gets past the top 100 picks, I want to make sure that he's on my bench because I think it's almost inevitable that he's going to get that opportunity this year and he's going to get into fantasy lineups.
I think it's a battle of patience too. If you're going to make this pick, you have to just let him sit on your bench. So if you have a shallow bench, it's kind of tricky. I get that. But if you are playing in a deeper league or you have a deeper bench and you have Coleman, it's one of those spots where he is going to save you fab for the inevitable, I think, J.K. Dobbins injury, where people are going to spend 20 to 30% of their budget to try to get Jonah Coleman if he's floating out there, and he will be in most casual leagues. I'm telling you right now, this is a guy that if you are going to do this and walk this same road as Joe Pisapia and Justin Boone are, then you have to be patient with it, and you have to understand that it might not come to fruition, but once that glass breaks, you're going to be happy that you have him on your roster. It's going to save you fab, and you immediately, to Justin's point, are getting an early down back who I think is going to be very important for a team that has big-time Super Bowl aspirations. Like, I heard somebody say this yesterday on NFL Network Radio. They asked him, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? And the guy's answer was, whatever team has the best quarterback and the healthiest team with the best defense. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a really good way of saying that because it is such a war of attrition. That is the blueprint, if you think about it. And the reason why the Denver Broncos couldn't quite get there last year is at the very end of the race, they had that quarterback get hurt. If Knicks had played in that game, as a Patriots fan, I'm still telling you, there's a good chance that the Denver Broncos were the ones going to the Super Bowl. I have zero doubt about that. So
yeah.
We'll
one thing I'll add to the Coleman story here is there's a couple other rookie backs that are in kind of similar scenarios, not quite the same, but they're also going even cheaper than Coleman is. One is Nick Singleton on the Titans, who's kind of in that like number 3 spot on the depth chart. And yet I think if Tony Pollard ever gets hurt or maybe later in the season, they sit him down and they want to see what the younger players have. Tajay Spears is kind of in that RJ Harvey pass catching role. Kind of seen everything from him. We know what he is. He's not a true lead back. There's a good chance that they would want to get Singleton out there and see if he can maybe be their starter late the season and then beyond. And then Damon Claiborne on the Vikings. Again, 3rd spot on the depth chart, or I think at least by the end of this month he will be. And Aaron Jones has a huge injury history. He's an older back. He's talking up Claiborne as someone who's very explosive. It could be a really good player for that offense. So could we see, if Aaron Jones misses time, some sort of Jordan Mason, Damon Claiborne pairing out there? I think Claiborne's a guy that we should keep an eye on as well. And again, those 2 players are going even later, but I always like to mention them when I talk about Coleman.
I would definitely think that Coleman is the guy, though. I mean, those are the deeper league cuts. Those are the deeper cuts. That's like the B-Sides album or the deluxe release that comes out remastered on Spotify that you're like, oh, there's 12 more songs. That's everything with my kids' generation now. They have these albums that, like on Spotify to come out, and then like a year or 2 later, they release basically another full album of deluxe whatever with all these other things. That's what those guys are. Pretty much.
I'm all about the deep cuts, Joe. That's what I'm here for. That's what I do with my rankings. We do.
Justin Boone.
I got asked a question last summer. Early on when I got to Yahoo, we did a show, and Harmon asked me to go over some of the rookie running backs, and I think they meant I was going to talk about top 5, top 6 guys or something. I did 27 running backs, and by the end of it, Harmon was just laughing at me, going, "I can't believe you went this deep." But a lot of those guys ended up mattering in fantasy this year, and a lot of them are going to matter this year in fantasy, so I think it was worthwhile.
You're so prolific. That's what I love about you. All right, let's move on to a tight end right now, and we have talked a lot here on the program, at least I have, about Tucker Kraft. Theo Greminger was on last week. He talked a ton about looking at Sam Laporta. You want to talk about Tyler Warren, which is great because this is that middle group of tight ends that I think have a tremendous return on value. Last year, started off like gangbusters when Daniel Jones was healthy. 76 receptions total, 817 yards, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, the 112 targets is what we're really focusing on there. Somehow the projections have him for less targets, which I don't understand if Daniel Jones is healthy and plays the full season, how we get there. The projections, I think, are a little conservative, 70 for 773 and 6 touchdowns based on, I guess, concern about Daniel Jones. But with every passing day, I seem to have less and less concern with that, which makes me, once again, I have a hard time in that second round investing in Brock Bowers with Kirk Cousins. I have a hard time with Trey McBride in my second round, not because they're not great talents, but because I'm passing on all of these other running backs and wide receivers that I want to build my roster strength around. Whereas Warren, Kraft, Laporta, these guys kind of last a little bit longer. So talk to me about why Tyler Warren is somebody that you shouldn't leave a draft without.
Well, I do think that there's a path towards Bowers having just an incredible season, like just one of the best tight end seasons we've ever seen. So we'll keep that in mind. But I agree with you. I love those running backs we talked about earlier for the second round. I really like Drake London in the second round. So it's tough to end up actually picking Bowers in that area unless he falls a little bit deeper, maybe to the end of the second or the 2-3 turn. So that's why. And I normally don't attack this range of tight ends, Joe. I normally don't want to spend like a middle round, early-ish pick on a tight end.
Is that what you are? You're a later.
Well, you're either with Bowers and the elite guys, or you're going to wait. You mentioned Tucker Kraft there, came up on the show. Love him as an injury discount. George Kittle's a great injury discount right now. There's Dalton Kincaid, Isaiah Likely, these guys later you could go after. But I keep coming back to Tyler Warren as sort of this like Brock Bowers light this year. We know the talent's there. First round pick. He essentially broke out last year. You touched on it, right? Early in the season, was pretty incredible through the first 10 weeks when Daniel Jones was out there with him, averaged the 6th most points among tight ends for fantasy. So he's shown that he can give us very good tight end one production. But now what's changed about his scenario? We always want to find these tight ends who could be the leading target getter on their offense, be the de facto number 1 or number 2 receiver. Well, he already led the team in targets last year with 112. Michael Pittman had 111. Now Michael Pittman's gone. Alec Pierce is hurt, and we expect that he will be back early in the season, but we don't really know what his recovery timeline is right now. And he's not a guy that commands a ton of volume, right? He's not that kind of player. Josh Downs could take on a lot of volume, but right now this passing attack is basically Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. And what we're hearing out of practice is it's these two guys just absolutely dominating the targets from Daniel Jones. I love to hear that. And I love it when it's a player like Warren, who I think can come through in a big way for fantasy because we saw it last year, but also the type of player he is. He can do things out of the backfield. They can do some gadgety stuff from the goal line with him, right? We saw that in college. We saw a bit of it last year. So that's intriguing. And then when you go to the Daniel Jones aspect, yes, Daniel Jones might not be fully healthy this year. Fantasy-wise, that's bad news for Daniel Jones. Maybe he can't run as much. He won't be as effective scrambling. Well, what does that result in? He's going to stay in the pocket. He better get that ball out quick because now he can't run with the same efficiency. And when he's getting the ball out quick, who's it going to? Well, it's going to Tyler Warren and it's going to Josh Downs in the short to intermediate ranges of the field. So that all sets up Tyler Warren to be a guy that can have a massive fantasy ceiling, a ton of volume. There's spike potential for his touchdown total. Really, really like him this year, even though you do have to pay for him. We're not getting him cheap. It's not the kind of thing where he's flying under the radar. People know
he's not as expensive as the top 3 guys. I'm a big Colton Loveland guy, so I always look for. See, this is why I love the position this year is because I get the flair that goes up. I see Bowers, I see McBride, and I know that I'm on Loveland watch. And now I'm watching to make sure I can get him. Now, if he goes ahead of me, this is then the pivot point of the Tucker Crafts, of the Warrens, of the Laportas. And you mentioned the touchdown possible regression or however we want to talk about it. He had a ton of red zone targets last year, but he didn't have a lot of touchdowns to show for it. Granted, obviously, the second half of the season, we understand why that's the case. But even that first half of the season, if that red zone percentage persists year over year, that touchdown number could easily double, I think, in 2026. That is not outside of the range of possibilities, as people like to say, for sure. So Tyler Warren, one of these guys. Go ahead, Boone. It looks like you got one more thing.
No, I was just going to say last year I'd identified Tucker Kraft as sort of the breakout tight end, and he was well on his way to doing that before he got hurt, right? He was fantastic early in the year. I think you could just
take that victory lap. He was.
I'm not one for... We don't need the victory laps, but yes, he was very, very good.
At the end for you with the water. I'm holding it out there like the marathon friends do. I'm encouraging you. I got to sign up.
You got to act like you've been there before,
Boone.
Right? No big celebrations in the end zone. Let's hand the ball to the referee and let's walk back to the bench.
I'm waving the Canadian flag for Justin Boone.
We'll do it again next time. But I want to point out one of the things that drew me to Tucker Kraft was his yak ability. The after the catch stuff was very good with him. He was leading the league. And what have we seen from Warren so far? Last year, total yak last year, he was second at the tight end position. He was 13th overall among all positions. Like, he has that as part of his game as well. So you love to see that. Just adds a little more value when you're talking about a fantasy tight end.
All right. Two wide receivers we're going to talk about, and then we're going to let Justin Boone get out of here. Both of them are wide receiver threes right now in terms of range that you're drafting him. The first is Christian Watson, who we've talked a lot about on the show. You wanted to highlight him. Obviously, Christian Watson has a checkered injury past of his own that he's dealing with. But if he hits these projections of 60 and 942 with 7 touchdowns, we're going to be very happy if he can get 100 targets this year. That means he's on the field. And then there's Parker Washington, another darling of the Fandom NFL program. Last year, incredible finish to the season, 5 touchdowns, 847 on 58 catches. This year, potential for a 1,000-yard season is certainly there. Obviously, both of these guys are in the question mark scenarios, right? It's not a matter of if. We know they can do it. It's can they do it consistently over an entire season? And there's different reasons here. Parker Washington, we saw a small glimpse, crowded other wide receiver room. With Christian Watson, it's not so much the crowdedness of the target share, it's whether or not he can be on the field that much. And this is not a guy that's going to, catch 8 balls a game. It hasn't really been Christian Watson's MO. He's the big playmaker guy. So in the half PPRs, I love him, but in the PPRs, I can understand why people might be a little cautious when it comes to him. So let's talk about Watson. Let's talk about Washington and why these are two wide receiver threes that you think obviously have a lot of appeal in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, for Watson, that receiver room's a lot more clear this season. It's the main 3 guys. Romeo Doubs is gone. Dontavian Wicks is gone. So it's just going to be him and Golden and Jaden Reed. So you like that. I don't think that necessarily had to happen for Watson to have an even bigger year this year, but it's nice to know that we're not going to have as much confusion perhaps amongst that Packers receiver core. But it all comes back to last year when we finally saw him out on the field, and we knew he had this in his bag, right? We knew he had the big playability. We knew he had the touchdown scoring ability. We finally saw it for 10 games last year. Over those 10 games, wide receiver 16 in fantasy points per game. And you said it. You can get him as your wide receiver 3. My wide receiver 3, I want a guy that has this spiked week potential, that could score a couple of touchdowns, that can make these huge plays. That's exactly what Watson is, but he's also like refining his game a little more. And often, I think this is one area in fantasy that we don't attribute enough to, which is these are young players and they're going to get better. Like, these guys get coached up, they're training, they improve over time. And I think Watson is emerging as more of that true number 1 receiver for the Packers. So very excited to see what he could do in this offense this year. Again, with all the caveats about the injury stuff. Hopefully he doesn't get banged up. Hopefully we can see it over a full 17-game season.
Well,
but
it's not a want, Booney. It's a need now. That's the difference. I think
it's true.
that's the biggest difference now. It used to be like this desire, I think, of not just us, but the Packers, of Watson to be that star. Now they need him to be that star because of the way that I think this team is structured and the way they've moved all those picks to get Michael Parsons. Like, they don't have the kind of depth where they can go look elsewhere at this point.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of things pointing in his direction. Like, you look at the on-pace stats last year, 10 games is a good enough sample size for me to go off of. It's still smaller than a regular season, but it's pretty solid. If you take his on-pace stats from those 10 games, we're looking at 60 catches, well over 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns, right? I think that's probably around what I would project him for this year. That actually puts him in the mix to potentially be a low-end wide receiver 1. Those numbers would have put him in that area last year if he had held up for the full season. So that's interesting. The Packers receivers have the 12th easiest fantasy schedule in my strength of schedule matrix. That's another little, feather in his cap that we can put in there. So I really like that. But going back, for me, the big thing is the spiked weeks. And if you look at his final 7 outings last year, he was inside the top 12 4 different weeks. That's what he brings to the table. So when he is out there, he is going to give you pretty good stats. He is going to be a good piece of your lineup. And I always say, too, at receiver, like, you can fill at receiver. If a receiver misses a week, if there are some injuries, as long as it's not just absolutely season ending and takes him out for the rest of the year, if we misses a game or here or there, that's fine. We can go to the waiver wire and find flex plays off the waiver wire to get in there, bye-week replacement type guys. We just need him to stay healthy for the majority of the season. And I have faith that what we saw last year in the second half of the season, he looked really good, and we're going to see it again this year.
And Parker Washington, Justin, is a player that I feel like started off this process where skepticism, and then now in mid-August, we're at a point where helium, it's going in the opposite direction. And I think it's because we are seeing in camp kind of things pick up where they left off for the Jaguars.
Yeah, the drumbeat for him has been about as loud or maybe louder than any player out there, right? And I get it. Going back to how he finished last season, after their week 8 bye, he led that group the rest of the way, 90 yards and or a touchdown in 5 of his last 7 games, was the wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game over the last 9 weeks. That was with Jacoby Myers as the wide receiver 31. That was with BTJ as the wide receiver 44. And what we're hearing this summer really makes it seem like we're going to see something like that with Parker Washington leading the way again. Every time they talk about him, they are just steaming him up. Beat writers are talking about how he's uncoverable in practice. He's catching everything out there. He's going to get a shot to do this again at the start of the year. And why not? Because last year, the best this offense looked was late in the season when he was that guy leading the receiving corps. And the Travis Hunter of it all, it's unfortunate in terms of his fantasy outlook, but this year, I think he's just going to be a part-time player. I think they've really shouted that from the rooftops if you listen to what they're saying. He is going to play on defense more. He's going to be sprinkled in on offense, but he is not going to take enough away where it's going to impact somebody like Washington. Could impact the other guys, I think. But Washington is going to be a focal point of this passing attack. And where you can get him, he's still been pushed up quite a bit here. But where you can get him in drafts, another guy, like you said, you can get him as your wide receiver 3. You don't need him to put up top 24 numbers. And yet I think he has that in his range of outcomes. And the Jags receivers have the 6th easiest schedule this year. So that really helps too. These guys are going to be good. I think you could take shots on BTJ as well. Jacoby Myers, I'm not as excited about, but we seem to underrate him every year in fantasy. So he's probably going to prove us wrong again.
There he is, wide receiver 26. Again,
he is the one.
Jacoby Myers somehow.
Parker Washington for me, I think ADP-wise right now, he's wide receiver 32, if I believe.
Yep.
And I have him as wide receiver 28. I'd like to push him higher, but there's a lot of guys in that range that I like.
That feels about right. I don't think we should push him higher than that because there is some, still a little bit of just question mark uncertainty there. But it's growing less and less every single day. But one thing I'm certain about always is the analysis of Justin Boone from Yahoo. Of course, go check out all the stuff at Yahoo there. And remember, we're giving away free stuff here on the show. We are closing in on 2,500 subscribers already. I'm going to give somebody a black book for free. If you want to get your black book, don't wait. Go to Amazon right now. You can save a tree and get it on Kindle, or you can just go ahead and get it on Amazon. Also, digital cheat sheets just updated, so you can get those also. You send your $5 in. They keep getting updated every time I make an RPV update, so check those out. Don't forget also more free stuff because we've got the Thurman Thomas giveaway that Justin Boone might be able to win, but I don't want to give it to him. So let's give it to one of you when we hit 5,000 subscribers here. You win it by liking this video or any video, subscribing to the channel, dropping your comments below, and don't forget to ring the bell to let those dings so you never miss a piece of content at Fandom NFL. Look at that. He's got, and are you happy I put your boy Josh Allen on the cover of the Black Book this year?
I love it.
We're going to break the curse with this. If the Black Book breaks the curse and the Bills win the Super Bowl, you can thank me. Okay, I just want you to know.
It'll be James Cook on the cover next year, right? We'll just keep it going after that.
Or maybe
can't break the streak.
Or maybe just speaking of streak, maybe it's Justin Boone streaking at the new stadium because he's so excited the Bills finally won a Super Bowl in his lifetime. Also exciting, the tools at RotoWire. Don't forget, use the promo code JoeyP when you sign up, 20% off. They've got the waiver wire tools for in-season. They've got the trade tools. They've got in-season management and all your draft stuff all in one spot. Download the app. Use the promo code JoeyP when you sign up over at RotoWire. Always great to talk to you, my friend. Thanks for making time. I told you we'd get you out in about 30 minutes, and we got you out in about 30 minutes. So there you go.
I'm shocked. When you and I get together and we noticed this at the expo, we can talk quite a bit, Joe. We can keep things going for hours. So I had my doubts that we were going to do it in that amount of time. But well done, man. That just speaks to how awesome you are as a host. You kept us moving.
I was going to say it's never a dull moment when the two of us talk. So we could just go for hours, and I think people would watch. But you've got a real job, and I'm just doing this. So, it's fine. So, all right, that's going to do it for us, everybody. Again, Justin Boone, go check out all his work at Yahoo. That's going to do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Justin, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, everybody. This has been Fandom NFL.